So we're directly jumping to the next session. It's presented by Helmut Wasserbacher and Professor Martin Spindler. Helmut Wasserbacher is Head of Digital Finance and Operations at Novartis, and Professor Spindler is a university professor for economics and artificial intelligence at the University of Hamburg. And they are talking about reimagining business finance with AI. So the stage is yours.
Thank you very much for this kind introduction. Welcome to our session on AI-based forecasting and planning. The next 10 slides are a short summary of the ingredients for success. And at the end, we have reserved some minutes for Q&A. Let us briefly introduce ourselves. As mentioned, my name is Martin Spindler. I'm professor for statistics, machine learning at the University of Hamburg. And my research field is machine learning, and in particular, causal machine learning, a new emergent field. And moreover, to bring research and practice industry, I have co-founded a startup called Economic AI, together with colleagues from MIT and Hong Kong University, where we develop state-of-the-art models based on AI for companies.
Good, thank you, Martin. I'm Helmut Wasserbach. I'm the head of digital finance operations at Novartis. My role is to drive with my team the digitalization of finance, and in particular the adoption at scale of AI and machine learning in business finance. One important disclaimer up front: we are here expressing our personal opinions and not those of our employers, but I think you didn't come to listen to the disclaimer, so let's get started. And as a start, let me delimit a little bit what we want to cover today. Digitalization in the finance area for an industrial company can cover many areas, and of each of them requires a different level of what I would call AI and machine learning intensity. And each of them also has a different value creation potential then associated with this for the enterprise. And it starts with data accessibility via digital visualization tools. It's a very important step, but per se, digital visualization doesn't need to have any AI or machine learning embedded into it. As a next step, you can go to transactional activities. A classical example is everything about robotic process automation in transactional accounting, for instance. And then as you move up, you get into forecasting. And here the need for AI and machine learning increases, and so does also the value creation potential for the company. And on the very right side, we have planning, which is now the task of allocating limited resources across the company. And it's about these two areas, forecasting and planning, that we will talk. Now, what does it take to implement AI-based forecasting and planning? What are the ingredients for success? And, we'll get to the first ingredient with Martin.
So data is the new oil, and data are an important ingredient for using AI and ML in financial forecasting and planning. And data in finance to come with some advantages. So they are usually well structured within the accounting systems. Compliance standards ensure a good level of data quality and consistency, and quantity is typically sufficient as a basis for applying AI, at least in major areas. Of course, data in finance is also not perfect. They're typically internally focused. They reflect economic transactions of the company. Often you need to complement this with external data. They usually focus on monetary terms. And I'm also sure that each of us knows examples of companies that struggle with their financial systems that are not integrated. And finally, let's not forget about the COVID-19 impact. Companies need a strategy how to handle the swings and potentially structural breaks due to the pandemic if they do not want to lose all their data prior to the outbreak. But again, financial data usually lend itself very well for using AI and ML at scale. So now is the question, why do we not see yet a widespread usage in financial planning? Why are companies not scaling AI up in their finance departments?
Yeah, this is the question Martin throws at me. Scaling up and embedding machine learning and AI within the operations has indeed proven difficult for many companies. And of course, there are notable exceptions, but what we see in many industries and in many functional areas is that AI is successful on a standalone case, but not when it should be embedded in the operations of the company at really industrialized level. So the finance function is not alone in that situation. So what's so difficult about AI at scale? Let's not forget that for a proof of concept or a standalone insight, an ad hoc analysis, you can pretty freely choose where, how, and when you want to apply AI. And the organization will accept that you invest time and energy to put together necessary data. And typically, you will have AI enthusiasts that gather around that project and that make it work. So in short, you have a sort of self-selection towards success. When you want to use AI in an organization at scale, it's a different story. You need to have 3 gears that work together. It's data, models, and then the biggest and most important one, it's the culture, and the organization. And you not only have to set these gears in motion, which will get you off the ground, but you want to sustain, of course, success. You have to keep them moving perpetually, reinforcing each other, and of course, they have to move in the same direction. So we've talked about the data gear just before. Finance, I think, is well positioned in that area with a couple of advantages on the side of finance. But let's talk about the other 2 gears, and let's begin with the models or the algorithms, and especially in the context of our topic, which is the AI-based financial forecasting and also the planning. Martin, over to you again.
Thank you, Helmut. So the amount of machine learning models and algorithms that can be used nearly off the shelf is large nowadays. However, this is only true for forecasting task or for prediction task. Planning, in the sense of allocation of resources within a company, is a different task. It's a so-called causal inference task. Let me give an example what this does mean. And for this, let's switch domain. Let's have a look at the medical example. So let's assume we find a positive correlation between wearing a lighter and lung cancer in a study. And here it's obvious that it's not a causal relationship. So wearing a lighter does not cause lung cancer. So here we have not understood the causal chain and we made a mistake. We missed smoking, which is, as established in the literature, a cause of lung cancer. And of course, smokers were often a lighter with them. So this is another correlation. And the interesting fact is that a simple forecasting model might nevertheless work very well. If smoking and wearing a lighter is highly correlated, the information that you wear a lighter with you is highly predictive for your later status of lung cancer. So a prediction model might nevertheless work very well. But now where does the problem come up? Now, if we want to intervene into the system, we need a causal understanding. Suppose the health minister of this country hears about this correlation and wants to decrease lung cancer rate. So he has or she has the idea to forbid lighters. But of course, this will not work because people will switch to matches and nothing will change. So I hope this example illustrates the difference between forecasting or synonymous pattern recognition, which is passive. You observe a pattern. But in causal inference, we want to intervene, we want to optimize. And for this, we need a causal understanding. Now, let's come back to our resource allocation example. So in resource allocation, we would like to find out what is the causal effect of marketing on sales. So on the left, the megaphone should be marketing expenses. The right is the sales. So this is a causal relationship we would like to know. But of course, there are also some unobserved confounder like management quality. Management quality usually is not contained in any data set, but it's like the cigarette on the left. It drives marketing expenses, but it also drives the number of sales. And another point here is we might have reversed causality. Because usually, if you have a country which has high sales, they have a strong negotiation power and also usually get a large marketing budget. But this chain is not interesting. For optimization, we need to know what is the causal effect of marketing to sales. So I hope now that from these examples, you see the difference between forecasting and planning. And I hope this difference has become clear. Here on this slide, we've summarized a few stylized dimensions. While the current focus, and this is a very important point, in industry and applications is on forecasting tasks, pattern recognition. In many situations, in particular economic, business-related situations, we need a causal model because we want to intervene, we want to change something. And my colleague, Professor Schölkopf, gave today a nice talk on this emerging field in the morning. And economics has a long tradition, but now the task is bringing together AI and causal inference.
Good, thank you, Martin. So I think, one takeaway is that AI-based forecasting is easier than planning. So let's continue on that route. But, even on forecasting, once you want to scale up the usage of your forecasts within the company, you need to address a couple of very important aspects. And let me give you an example. And, given my background, you may imagine where I'm coming from. So imagine you're in a global company that sells pharmaceutical products, and you operate in roughly 50 markets that are all different. And in every market, you have roughly 50 different medication products, which are, again, all different disease area, different formulation, different therapeutic area, and so on. And then on top, pharmaceutical products have this property that they go typically through a life cycle. So once a product is approved, you have a launch stage where the uptake is pretty steep. This flattens out then over a more stable phase, and then you have a moment where you lose patent protection, you lose exclusivity, you've lost of exclusivity, and a generic competitor comes in. And since you want to forecast over, let's say, 3 to 5 years to have a meaningful forecast, you typically hit at least 2 stages. So you need to do forecasts for 50 markets, 50 products, and 2 stages. That means you need to do 5,000 forecasts. Now, from a computational side, you're going to say that this is not an issue. 5,000 forecasts, you can handle this easily with every reasonable infrastructure. But the real challenge is that you do not only have 5,000 AI forecasts, you also have at least 5,000 non-AI forecasters. And these non-AI forecasters are essentially the general managers, the brand managers, the salespeople. And how do you get them to work with an AI-generated forecast? Because AI-generated forecasts are typically perceived as black box figures. So the question is then, how do you set this larger gear of organization and culture in motion? How do you go about this? Actually, you start by explaining the smaller gears to the organization. And I'm coming back to what I mentioned in the beginning about the importance of having transparency on the data with visualization tools. So setting the largest gear in motion, actually, you first set in gear the data motion. And it can be something as simple as an interactive digital visualization that is as easy to use as any conventional smartphone app. And we have done this actually at Novartis. We call this the Genie app. It's an iPhone-based app, and it is so intuitive that the majorities of users are not in finance. They are precisely the general managers, the marketing people, the sales people that we want to reach with our forecasts. And then you move to the next stage, you move to the model part. And for the model part, you need a solid understanding in a large part of the organization how AI and ML works, what AI can do, and also very important, what AI cannot do. In my experience, that needs to go beyond the superficial, shiny use cases that you can find in brochures. So very concretely, for our business finance organization, we're running a 5-day training course that contains a significant technical component. Actually, you can see on my background, the course is by coincidence running this week also. And we've observed 3 effects from that. One is that as AI loses the black box image, you increase general acceptance. So the first step. Second, as people go back from the course into their day-to-day jobs, they actually come back with ideas how to use AI already at scale where they work. And this is very insightful then for further developments. And third, the language barrier that typically exists between the data scientists and, let's say, the business finance community decreases. And that makes what we call co-creation of AI solutions so much easier. And that leads me to 3 more elements that are necessary to embed AI in the organization. and ultimately then unlock the value creation that the AI holds. And I mentioned the co-creation between dedicated data scientists and business finance in the respective markets has really increased the buy-in and the usage. So we capture business insights and domain expertise at a very granular level, and it allows then to have machine learning models that really react to the specific market characteristics. Second important aspect is that AI outputs need to allow for a minimum level of interpretability on the side of the end user, obviously. You can also call this intuitive understanding of why AI proposes what it proposes. And of course, last but not least, you also need certain reliability of the results, so accuracy. And once you have these three elements, you get to buy in, which means you can embed AI into your organization, and this unlocks the value creation potential. And if we talk about value creation potential for a typical forecasting and planning process in a global industrial company, on, let's say, the annual budget or so, we believe that you can cut the time that you spend on this in half. So which of course, then reinforces again the buy-in in the organization. That concludes my part. Martin, I think you have a couple of suggestions for further references now.
Thank you, Helmut. So thanks to our audience for your attention. We hope we have also your buy-in that AI is well suited for financial forecasting and planning, and to conclude some references. So Helmut and I summarized the challenges of using AI for financial forecasting and planning in a working paper, which will be soon available on Archive. So, or if it's not yet available, reach out to us. We can send it to you, but in 1 week it should be online. Then, together with my colleagues, Viktor Chernosukov and Dielu, we had some time ago an introductory article in the FAZ for some of you who are interested in this topic and might get started. And recently, my team and I in Hamburg, we developed our Python package called WML, where state-of-the-art methods for causal machine learning are implemented and are easy accessible. And there you can find also more research-related references. Here you can see also our contact addresses if you would like to catch up further. So thanks again for your attention. And now we are looking forward to your questions and comments.
So thanks a lot. There's just one remark from Oliver Maasfuhl, who is from Commerzbank, who's just saying that it's an extremely relevant topic and ignored by too many engineers. So he's very, he liked your speech, as I suggest, and mentioned that it's very important. And maybe one question as we have just time for one question regarding those kind of implementations at Novartis. So if you could say something about this, that would be a very good conclusion.
Yeah, so as I said, on digitalization journey, I think in Novartis Finance, we have translated an overall strategic objective of Novartis, which is to go big on data and digital. And the finance function has taken this to heart. So we have made a big progress, on these 4 elements that I laid out in the beginning. On the one hand, the digitalization in the visualization, then usage of RPA in the transactional processes. And on the forecasting and planning side, we have gone live now since 2 years with that approach. And what you've heard in our talk here reflects largely the learnings that we have gathered over this 2-year journey. So the approach is live in what is called the Innovative Medicines Division, which is the part of Novartis that covers essentially the patent-protected medication.
Thanks a lot for those very interesting insights, and wish you a lot of success with this kind of projects. As a lot of commentators said, this will be far more important in the future. It would be interesting to see how this field develops in the next years. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us. Thank you.